It makes me proud to be an imported Pakistani, because I've been living here now for the great part of my life. And you know, when I'm in the States, people always say, yes, I'm a Pakistani American. I say, okay, chalo, I'm an American Pakistani. You know? You're very intelligent, but if you had to sit in a classroom in China that was in full Chinese, you would be lost. And that's how a deaf child feels if he's stuck in a mainstream school where everybody's talking and he can't understand what's being said. But if you look at the deaf community, because they have no disability other than loss of hearing, there's no intellectual challenge there. And if we can give them education and training in their language, all things are possible. Sab cheez kar sakte hain, right? We had the opportunity to come to Pakistan to help on a project that a friend of ours, a colleague, was managing here in Karachi. He said, can you guys come help me for a few months? So we said, sure, let's go. We love to travel, we like new places. And while we were here, we were also looking for a situation where our son, who was just a young teen at the time, could get his education. We did a lot of homeschooling because we traveled a lot. But we really had a difficult time finding anything that was of any quality. And a business friend of ours whom we had met here said, look, I have an empty office space in Sadr at Regal Cinema Chow, Regal Trade Square building. It was a room about this big. And he said, I'll just give it to you, do something with it. So there we started our very first Deaf Reach Center. Because we had met a number of deaf teenagers, and they all said, please teach us English, help us find a job. So sure, come on over. So on a daily basis, we would spend the afternoons there. We had about 15 or 20 young people. Then some families heard about this. Some families particularly that were based in Baldia town, which is a slum area, as you know, Kachi Abadi area. And, oh sir, hamare bache deaf, kya kare? I said, oh, I don't know, just bring them over, let's see. Oh, but we don't have any conveyance. So I asked this gentleman, and he put us in touch with a friend of his who sponsored a small van. And we were bringing a dozen children from Baldia town every day. And that was our first primary class. These children were 6, 7, 8 years old. So we had one group for the teenagers and then another group for these primary kids. And I was like, wow, this is turning into a school. It's more than just a, you know, a casual thing. Now we've got this is a responsibility. During COVID, school came to a halt. Not just for us, for everyone, right? And the biggest challenge was, how do we continue the children's education? It was almost a year and a half schools were closed. But for us, there was a secondary challenge that was even more important, was how do we help our children retain their language? Because when they're in school, they're in this full signing environment. When they're at home, the families hardly know sign language, just some basic signs. So they're very isolated. So we came up with this crazy idea, well, let's film the content of their classes, you know, film the signers signing their classes, and we'll deliver it to them. And we thought, well, wait a minute, every kid's gonna need a laptop, we're gonna need a studio, we're gonna need the equipment, we're like, well, that's a mountain. But these are, again, the miracles of Pakistan. We found a donor who bought a laptop for each one of our students. Not a brand new one. You know those little IBM ThinkPads? We found them for $50 a piece in Lahore. But we gave one to each of our students. We set up a studio, we started filming math, English, science, Urdu, general knowledge, and on a monthly basis, because these kids are all offline where they live, they don't have internet, our teachers would go around with a USB drive and upload that month's content and collect their worksheets. So over 18 months, we kept our kids up to par. And when they came back to school, we realized, wait a minute, this is a solution to the needs of deaf education. Instead of a distance learning program, it's a digital learning program. And right now we're in the process of filming curricular content for each grade level, starting from KG, then grade 1, then grade 2. I think sometimes the greatest things that happen to us in life are something we could never even plan for or anticipate, which is basically what happened to me. Even though I was working in this sector, helping others, it turned out that my first child, who was, his name was Michael, was deaf. He contracted meningitis as a baby, which left him deafened. And that was a huge tragedy, if you will. I mean, as a young man, I was like very heartbroken and thought, oh my God, this is the end. What am I going to do? I have a child now with a handicap. But it was the things I learned caring for that child that in a sense has prepared me and my family for the work we're now doing. So I couldn't have planned that. And it wasn't some mission we chose. In fact, I pretty much was very discouraged and disheartened by the whole thing, even angry. I remember that time being very discouraged, and I was seeking some advice, and I knew this man who was, I trusted him, he was very godly. And he said, look, something like this can make you bitter or better. It's a choice you have to make. But I can tell you, if you make the right choice, the things that you learn taking care of this one child, one day can benefit many. So take it as a training program. I think as I grew and learned what it meant to take care of him and his needs, it deepened me and enabled me to then understand the needs of others with those same challenges. I'm really proud. I think what we've done is created a culture or an environment where people are very happy to work. They feel safe. They feel they're able to be creative and explore their gifts and talents. And so we have very little attrition, hardly any turnover unless someone gets married and their husband takes them on. Even then I said, no, we gain sons, we don't lose daughters. You went through the vocational department there, you saw some of the handicrafts that were made. The young woman who's managing that, her name is Maimuna. She was one of the first students from Baldia back in the day. She was like 6 years old. She's been with us all these years. She graduated the BA program. She's recently married to one of her fellow students who's working in the sign language department, and she's now working full-time managing the handicrafts, the Dastakhat department. And they just had a baby. So to me, that's an amazing story because this is full circle solution, from education to livelihood to marriage to building a family. And I think that's the kind of success that we want to be able to engender for all of our students. I mean, not everyone's going to have exactly that story. I'll tell you another story. Mrs. Rifat, who is the head of our KG department, I don't know if you saw our little guys there. She herself is deaf. She has 4 deaf sons. So many years ago, she came to know about us, and she would bring her sons here and then sit outside on a bench. One day I said, Rifat, what are you doing here? Sir, I don't have money for conveyance. They come from a very sort of poor family in Lundy. And I said, well, so then you're here, volunteer, you know, you're a mother, you know sign language, you're deaf. And so she proved to be such a able volunteer, we hired her full-time as a teacher. Her 4 sons have progressed through school. Her oldest son now is working full-time in the sign language department. Her second oldest son, Usman, got a 5-year scholarship to go to the American School for the Deaf in Connecticut. 5-year residential scholarship, all expenses paid, and this is his 5th year now he's graduating. So, you know, that was the first ever deaf student that actually went out of Pakistan to the States like that. Those are just a couple. I mean, we could sit here for a few hours. I'll tell you a few more. Deaf employees are very committed. They're very capable. They deliver at a level that a mainstream employee might do. And in the past few years, we've provided over 2,000 job placements. This is across industries, textile, pharma, service, food, KFC restaurants. You know, credit to KFC, Raza Pirbhai, who is their CEO, he had the vision to be more inclusive, and he sort of paved the way for others to follow. Now there's 7, 8 deaf-run KFCs, and all their branches, not all, but many of them also employ deaf persons. So there's over 200 young people working in KFCs. I think when you have a purpose, a mission, a goal, and we had started something, and you can't just abandon that. It's like having children. How can you just say, okay, Allah Hafiz, now take care of yourself, right? I mean, and we felt that commitment. And in spite of the challenges, you know, Pakistan is an amazing place. Pakistani people are amazing people. Very warm, very receptive, very hospitable. 90% of our support comes from the local Pakistani community, whether it's corporate or philanthropic. And in fact, the other 10% comes from the diaspora abroad. So really it's 100% pretty much Pakistan funded in that regard. I think it's a badge of honor that every Pakistani can wear proudly. I've lived in over a dozen countries working in the development sector where we were dependent on, you know, community funding. It's always a challenge, you know, that's there. But Pakistan has been the most supportive, the most generous, the most hospitable of any country I've ever lived in. So, Dil Dil Pakistan.